Hello, I am Q2F2 and today I'm doing another GLua tutorial. Last video we covered the idea of the basic semantics of Garry's Mod programming and scripting with Lua, along with the different realms which are available to programming. Today we'll be doing some generic code which will be working on both client, server, shared, or otherwise realms, and we'll be covering the file system, specifically the virtual file system that exists within Garry's Mod, how file structuring works for add-ons, including files and recursive file loading to procedurally load files. So without further information, let's get started. First thing we're going to cover is the structure of an add-on. So, you've probably noticed in my other tutorials I've mentioned that if you want to run code, you want to put it in a folder called Lua. Now, you'll notice, as I previously described, but I'm going to elaborate a bit more, this is similar to if we go into our main Garry's Mod directory, we have Lua here. You also have several other folders, which we can have in an add-on as well. This is because Garry's Mod uses what's known as a virtual file system. This is the main working directory for that virtual file system, or specifically it's actually here, but this acts as the main working directory. But because it's a virtual file system and not a actual hard-coded file system, we can merge specifically Garry's Mod merges its current working directory, which is this, with the contents of add-ons. So if we had several add-ons here, we only have test add-on, it would merge everything in here with the folders within here. Now, because Garry's Mod uses its main working directory /Lua to load scripts, inside the add-on we use Lua to put our scripts. Now, once again, within the virtual file system of Lua scripts, there's a special folder named autorun. Since it's a special folder, we cannot give it another name, it's called autorun. And within this currently, any Lua files that are placed here, any code whatsoever, will be run shared, both on the client and on the server. If we wanted to differentiate and only run some code specifically on the client, we could make a subfolder called client and a subfolder named server. Like I said before, menu programming, so menu state programming, is a lot different to this. But we won't be covering that. Oh my god, I swear to god, if someone messages me again, I'm going to kill them all. So, if we wanted to run code shared, like I said, we'd have shared.lua. Here, I'm going to create that because we're going to be using that later. Here we can have server.lua, and here we can have client.lua. Now, I'd like to mention I'm doing something really horrendous here. By giving these files extremely generic names, not only am I making it hard to figure out what they are while we're in here, unless we know specifically what this add-on does, I'm also likely to cause conflicts. As I said, add-ons are not their own separate directories. They are merged with the main working directory. They are mounted onto the game. So if we had a Lua script here, named shared.lua, it would conflict with the one in our add-on. So, for this purpose of the test and our tutorial, it will be fine. But please give your files original names, most likely ones that describe your add-on. So, for example, we'll rename this one just to test, but we won't rename the others because they're not going to conflict, but they could. So, what's this? This is test add-on. Test add-on shared. Now, that will be very unlikely to conflict. It still may, which is if you occasionally see some conflicting add-ons on the workshop, that's sometimes it's caused by stuff like this. And as you saw in the FastDL, tutorial, you can also have a folder for sound or models or materials here, and that will act as content for your add-on, so you can package it all in a nice little package. Now, when you're programming, you most likely won't want every single function and bit of code in a single file, or you might not want everything to run at the same time. This is where a couple of ideas come in. Firstly, if it's in Lua, it can be included. So, instead of putting in auto run, which will, as the folder name suggests, run automatically, let's make our own folder. Once again, we could put scripts in here, but they'd be more likely to conflict, so let's make our own folder, which is test add-on underscore Lua. I mean, usually I just call it something like test add-on, but it makes more sense to call it test add-on Lua, as to make it a bit easier on the eye. So let's create a script in here. Test add-on underscore load. Oh, I forgot to give that a Lua extension. Oh well. I mean, not Lua. Whoops, I did not mean to open that. There we go. So, in our add-ons we now have test add-on with some basic structuring to it. You've also probably noticed that some add-ons have an add-on.txt. That's not needed, but we'll create one here for good measure. And also because, as I mentioned in my last tutorial, it allows me to set my project's working directory. I can expand this all and see all of our files. So, let's say we want test add-on load to be loaded on both the server and the client. Now, the server knows this is here, and the server knows all of these files. It knows every last one of them. But to save memory, we don't send something to the client unless it's either auto-run client or we specify we're going to send it to the client. So let's specify we're going to send that file to the client. We're going to use a built-in function named add CS. Hang on. Is it add CS Lua file? I believe so. But once again, if in doubt, let's just check the wiki. So wiki.garysmod.com, add CS Lua file. Marks the file, Lua file to be sent to the client when they join the server. Alright, so this is run relative to our working directory / Lua. So we don't need to do Lua / or anything because we're already our current directory when we're running from here is this. It's Lua. So let's trace to find this. So Lua. Then we go down to test add-on underscore Lua. So let's add that. Test add-on underscore Lua. And from test add-on Lua, we're including test add-on underscore load / test add-on underscore load dot Lua. Now the file is being sent to the client, but the client still won't open it. The client knows it's there now, but it's not going to load it unless we tell it to. So let's do this. Since we're on shared, if we do anything here, it's going to be run on both the client and the server. So you're probably thinking, why are we adding this on the client? Well, we could do if server then add CS Lua file end, but we don't need to. The client knows that add CS Lua file does nothing for it, so we don't need to worry about that, just for the sake of keeping our code a bit neat. Alright, so we're on the shared. We're shared at the moment. We're on the shared route, and we want to load this load.lua. So let's use a GarysMod function, which is include. Include will open the file and run its contents. Once again, it's relative to /Lua, so we're going to include the same stuff. Let's save that. Now we're going to demonstrate this. Firstly, on the client, let's print print, obviously, just output some information to the console. Print test add-on loaded client side. Let's just copy this, save that, go to server.lua, test add-on loaded server side. Let's save that as well. Let's print. This will print on both of them. So let's do test add-on loaded on shared. God, I'm really popular today. It's a shame I don't want to be popular. I'll talk to all of those people later. Don't worry. So load on shared, and inside the load, which we'll be doing some more code in a second, print test add-on load file has been loaded. Which sounds a bit weird, but you know, yeah. So, without further ado, let's try running this. Okay, so our server is starting up, and here we go. Test add-on loaded on shared, which ran here because it's loaded on the server, because it's shared, it's on both. Test add-on load file has been loaded. We'll notice that's before the server side, because the shared file executed, and if we look, where is it, shared, it prints this and then immediately loads it, well, after adding it to the client. And then it executes the server side. Let's connect to our local server. You know the fact it's still called Learning to Fastial, I just haven't changed the name. And here we go, we're in game. Now if we open up our client and look here, test add-on loaded on shared, test add-on load file has been loaded, test add-on loaded client side. Now note, this loads the server side and not the client side, and this loads only the client side, but both load the shared and both load the shared include. Include isn't exclusive to shared. We could, for example, remove this from here, and by removing this from here we don't need to add it to client either, and go to server and just include this on server. Now you'll notice test add-on loaded on shared, test add-on loaded server side, test add-on load file has been loaded. On the client, test add-on loaded on shared because we performed a Lua refresh. In GarageMod, if you have something in the virtual file system which is mounted and you edit a Lua file, Lua refresh. Let's try rejoining those so we can get a full Lua refresh. And if you're a sharp user, you should have realised by now that it's going to print that it loaded shared, then it loaded client side, but it did not load the quote load file. And here we go. Test add-on loaded on shared, test add-on loaded on client side. Nice. So, if you're writing an add-on that has a lot of files, there may come a point where you don't want to type hundreds of lines of include. Now, not only can we understand how the virtual file system works in relation to our add-on, we can manipulate it using GarageMod's built-in library file. Here, library file. And as you can see, since it's a virtual file system, there's different methods of checking data. Different methods of searching for our files, should I say. Data, only showing data, which I'll be explaining in a second. Mod just searches only the GarageMod folder, which is our current working directory. Game searches the GarageMod folder, but with all mounted Source Engine games on GarageMod. And Lua searches in the Lua files. So here are some of the functions: append, create, delete, exist, etc, etc. Stuff you would expect when you're manipulating files. So let's say we, on our shared, we don't want to, in fact, let's not do it here. Say on our shared, where's shared? Ah, yes, here. On our shared, we don't want to include this. We don't want to include it on the server either. We don't want to manually include this file because we've got a million of these files right now. We've built the most massive add-on you've ever seen. So rather than including each file individually, what we can do is we can like scan for the files using the file system. So let's give this a whirl. Local files folders equals file dot find test add-on underscore load slash star, which indicates any file name dot Lua, and we're looking for that in the Lua context. Now to test, let's print files. Actually, I just noticed a couple of errors. We should be doing print table, not print, and it's test add-ons Lua. Let's try this. And there we go. It finds that one file. If we were to create a second file, a new file which test add-on score other file dot Lua. Just we don't want anything on here, we're just using it as a test. And if we're to go to the shared, reload this, it should print both those files. If I wasn't selected. There we go. Both of the files are now found. Now we could use a system like this and iteration, which is repeating, to load these files automatically. So for underscore file in pairs files do print loading, and let's append file because in this case file is a string, and then include file. Let's load that. Oh, couldn't find it. Oh, of course, because we're looking in here. It only gives us the file name, not this. So we're going to append our working directory onto this. Like so. And there we go, it works. Loading test add-on other file, loading test add-on load. Beautiful. For the final part of this tutorial, I'm going to talk about saving data. In the future, we're going to come across more instances where saving data will be useful, but for now, let's just demonstrate. So let's say we want to write just a simple message to save some data, which is going to be a simple message for now. So we're just going to be lazy and use file.write. File.write writes to data, because you can't write anywhere else to stop exploits. So I'm going to write test add-on .txt, and the contents of this will be, hello, I am a test. Let's try running this, and it is shared, so this will write it to both the server and the client. Let's go to our server, to Garry's Mod, no add-on, Garry's Mod, and then data. And here we have text add-on, test add-on.txt. If we open it up, hello, I am a test, just like we did. Now, let's say we're storing some information in here and we want to read it. So let's read it. So local file contents equals file.read. Now you can read anything, so you need to define where you're looking. test addon.txt in data. Excuse me. Now we've got that in a variable. Let's try printing that out. File, contents. And we can run that. Hello, I am a test. So that works well. Now if we have a look, there are a few other things. For example, file.exists will tell you if the file exists. File.delete allows you to delete relative to data. File.write we've already seen. File.append adds text onto the file, a file that already exists. And of course you can create directories. For example, if you use a generic name like server startup log or something like that, you might want to put it in a directory. Just like we saw with clashing Lua files, you can end up overwriting somebody else's data. That's never a good thing. I think that wraps up the basics of the file system and using it. Obviously, in the future tutorials where we move on from the basics and talk more about implementation, I will be covering some more specifics and how we'll be using this, for example, to store a database. Because there are several ways to do that in Garry's Mod, of which this is one. But anyway, this is the end of the video for now. If you found this video useful, like it, share it, or do whatever. You don't need to, but if you think other people will benefit from it, then please do. Thanks for watching. This is Q2F2, and goodbye.